Today is May 6th, 2014. My name is Jake Morphonios. This is the End Times News Report. I frequently say in my videos that if the Founding Fathers were alive today, they would have no idea what had become of their country. If they were reincarnated and were able to look around and see what was going, I have no doubt that they would start another revolution. This time to break away not from the British government, but from the American government that has become far too imperial for its own good. And what would our government do? Well, same thing the British Empire tried to do to them back then. They'd try and kill them. They'd call them extremists, terrorists. In fact, the nation's founders are considered extremists by the Pentagon, according to a training manual that they came out with last year. They explicitly label the framers as extremists. Last year, Judicial Watch, which is a legal watchdog, they filed a Freedom of Information Act request to produce the manual. It's part of 133 documents that were provided by the Air Force. The January 2013 Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute created a student guide, and it covers, among other things, extremism. The manual defines as an extremist, and this is a direct quote, a person who advocates the use of force or violence, advocates supremacist causes based on race, ethnicity, religion, gender, or national origin, or otherwise engages to illegally deprive individuals or groups of their civil rights. All right, now that doesn't sound too bad. They're talking about the KKK or people trying to overthrow the government. But it goes on to say this, and again, I quote, nowadays, instead of dressing in sheets or publicly espousing hate messages, many extremists will talk of individual liberties, states' rights, and how to make the world a better place. End quote. Wow, you talk about how to make the world a better place and the U.S. government considers you an extremist? You talk about your liberties or states' rights and that's indication that you're an extremist? So if you love liberty and freedom more than you love a big, powerful central government that has grown well beyond its constitutional boundaries, you are an extremist. If you dare to take care of yourself, if you are going to be an individual who grows his own food, you are an enemy of the state. As I recall, among the Founding Fathers, there were a number of farmers and plantation owners among them. If you go to the section in this manual labeled Extremist Ideologies, the manual states, quote, in U.S. history, there are many examples of extremist ideologies and movements. The colonists who sought to free themselves from British rule and the Confederate States who sought to secede from the northern states are just two examples. What? Our Founding Fathers are extremists. It's right there. So, though the document released by Judicial Watch for others to look at, it originated in the Department of Defense office. So it's likely in use by other agencies, is what the Judicial Watch said. Judicial Watch president said this, quote, the Obama administration has a nasty habit of equating basic conservative values with terrorism, and now, in a document full of claptrap, its Defense Department suggests that the Founding Fathers and many conservative Americans would not be welcome in today's military. He goes on to say, and it is striking that some of the language in this new document echoes the IRS targeting language of conservative and Tea Party investigations. After reviewing this document, one can't help but worry for the future and morale of our nation's armed forces. Well, this isn't the first time that the federal government or one of its agencies or some other official source has equated freedom-loving Americans who have the founders' view of the Constitution and its meaning with extremism. If we go back to InfoWars, Alex Jones, 2009, he obtained a copy of a law enforcement sensitive document from the Missouri Information Analysis Center. And this report was called the Modern Militia Movement. And among the potential terrorists listed were supporters of presidential candidate Ron Paul, or Chuck Baldwin, or Bob Barr, the Libertarian candidate. If you are a supporter of Ron Paul, as I am, and as many people are, you are influenced by terrorism, by the terrorist ideology. Also, in July of 2012, InfoWars exposed the Department of Homeland Security, a study funded by them, by the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, that characterized Americans who are suspicious of centralized federal authority and those who are reverent of individual liberty as being extreme right-wing terrorists. Now this is shocking. In the past couple of decades, it has become very clear that the federal government has become increasingly hostile toward anyone, whether it's a group or an individual or a political movement, that seeks to curb the power of the federal government. Constitutionalists are portrayed as kooks and psychos. The modern day KKK, we're called a bunch of Timothy McVeigh style domestic terrorists, while the federal government is shown as being the righteous, proper, adult type organization that is here to protect us from these extremists. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that this is a very, very dangerous trend. It has made dialogue next to impossible. It's created a climate that can't be reconciled. And I'm telling you this, the federal government is putting the citizens of the country in a situation that will lead to violence. I don't advocate violence, but if you look at the history of our nation, if you read the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson and the others explain clearly in the Declaration of Independence that while it is the nature of man to tolerate the usurpation of power and abuses by the government, so long as such things are tolerable, it's the nature of man to just put up with it and not to rebel. But, they explain in the Declaration of Independence, when those usurpations and that tyranny persists for a period of time, and it becomes clear that you cannot get a proper redress of grievances against the government, when the government will not abide by the law of the land, which is the Constitution, which is supposed to restrain the federal government from doing almost everything that it does today. When it comes to that point that the people no longer are in control of their government, when the government starts to control the people, the founders said very clearly in that sacred document, the Declaration of Independence, they said it is not only the right of the people, but the duty of the people to revolt, to either abolish or alter, if possible, that form of government which is bringing tyranny upon them, and to seek some other form. So do I sound like a domestic terrorist? According to the government, certainly. According to the Declaration of Independence, no. I'm a patriot. So it's up to you to decide which source you want to rely on. Are you going to look to the government as the source of wisdom and knowledge when it comes to your rights as a human being or as an American citizen? Or are you going to look back to those men who spent a long time studying these issues, looking at the documents and the teachings of other patriots from other nations, of ancient civilizations, of various empires, and looked at them to see what works and doesn't work? I think that our founders knew what they were doing. I think that they were inspired by God to establish the Declaration and the U.S. Constitution along with the Bill of Rights. I think that the federal government has grown far beyond anything that they ever dreamed it could become. It was the anti-federalists like Patrick Henry who kept telling the Federalists, like John Adams and the others, look, the Constitution is not clear enough. We will not support the ratification of the U.S. Constitution unless we also pass the Bill of Rights that clearly elucidates what things the government cannot do. The Federalists did have a good point. They said, look, the Constitution is very clear. It says these are the powers assigned to the government. Anything else other than that is outside of the powers of the government. But Patrick Henry and the Anti-Federalists said that is not good enough. It is the nature of government and men in general to take power and to grow it. Just look at everything. And so fortunately, they pushed, and the Federalists backed down and said, fine, we support the Bill of Rights. And so when you look at the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, you can hardly find anything in there that that is not being infringed upon by the U.S. government, by the federal authorities. Well, I'm putting pictures. You've seen pictures as this video has gone on. Pictures from my garden. I'm flaunting it in their faces. Yes, I am a domestic terrorist. I grow my own food as much as I can. I understand that farming and doing this kind of thing, being self-sufficient and not getting my food from grocery stores when possible, I know that this is a terribly extremist thing to do. But I'll tell you this, when the time comes, me and my family, we will have the skill and the experience to be able to take care of ourselves. We will not have to take the mark of the beast to buy and sell or trade. When a one world order, a one world government is dictating to us what we must eat, what we can't eat, we will be able to take care of ourselves. I strongly suggest, as nutty as it may sound to some of you, I strongly suggest that you learn how to become more self-sufficient in whatever ways you can, be it learning how to grow your own vegetables, or storing food or water, non-perishable things that you can keep there at home. Whatever you can do to become more self-sufficient when the economic collapse comes and people are reduced to penury and forced, if they want to survive, people are going to have to do one of two things. They're either going to have to turn to the government for some type of food and welfare assistance because it will be rationed, or you have to provide for yourself. I tend to see the wisdom in being self-sufficient. If you're with me on this, please take a second to click the thumbs up button, share the video with your friends, make sure you are subscribed to this channel, and also subscribe to our backup channel. If anything ever happens to this main channel, we'll have our backup channel ready to go. Plus, we have some bonus materials on our backup channel that you may enjoy. Until next time, this is Jake Morphonios. Keep growing those vegetables, and I'll talk to you next time.